Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of What If Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the world leader. If you guys enjoy this what if, and want to see part 3 of it, comment down below, and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. The Great Gates of Konoha were always surprising to people who had never seen them before. You'd think that giant, 40-story tall wooden monoliths would garner small. However, when Yujiro and Samui saw the gates, they both paused, made a hum sound, and kept walking. Yugao and Naruto both shot each other a questioning glance, and simultaneously shrugged. Making their way to the Hokage's tower, Samui and Yujiro noticed the odd looks they were being given, as well as the few normal ones of lust and envy. But what really caught their notice was the glares Naruto was being hit with. It was that of hatred and indifference. The sisters looked at each other with confused eyes. Yo? Naruto's called through the women from their contemplation, and they found Naruto chatting with two girls. One wore a short red dress, with black biker shorts underneath. The oddest thing about her was her hair, which was light pink. The other girl had her light blonde hair in a ponytail that reached the small of her back. She wore mostly purple, a tank top and a skirt, bandages wrapped around her stomach, and white arm warmers around her forearms. Both wore the headband of the leaf, denoting their statuses as ninja, the pink one around her hair, and the purple one around her waist as a belt. Hey, long and blonde, pretty in pink. How are you guys? Naruto asked cheerfully. Long and blonde smiled brightly and replied, Hi Naruto-kun. Sakura and I managed to pass our Genin test, so we're doing good. What about you, though? All of us were worried when you didn't show up to the team assignments a week ago. The golden blonde smiled sadly. Yeah, about that. Pretty in pink tilted her head in confusion. What's wrong, Naruto? I thought you would be on a team with Suki, or the twins for sure. Naruto waved the two former Kumo Kunoichi over, and introduced them. Sakura-chan, Ino-chan, meet my teammates, Samui and Yujiro-ni. The two younger girls looked over the older blondes, somewhat enviously. The older blondes looked on the Konoha Kunoichi with indifference. The tension in the area started to rise past just awkward tension, going beyond ex-girlfriend to girl you had sex with then forgot to call. Seeing this, the only male left in the vicinity hurriedly grabbed Samui's and Yujiro's hands, and began pulling them away. Gotta go, bye. He called out, dragging the surprised women down the street. Ino and Sakura both watched with shocked looks on their faces. They gave each other grave looks, then walked off. Hinata, Hanabi, and Suki would need to know about this. Naruto, Samui, Yujiro, and Yuga arrived at the door to the Hokage's office, and Naruto dropped the women's hands. He rapped on the door 3 times, and entered as a rough voice called out, Enter. Pushing open the door, Yuga revealed to the two ex-kumonin the leader of Konohagakure, the Kami no Shinobi, the professor, one of the most feared ninjas of his day. Smoking from a wooden pipe and signing papers. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up from his paperwork and smiled, seeing Naruto return. Ah, Naruto-kun, Uzumaki-chan, you're back, and in a timely manner. That's important for a shinobi. He stood from his chair and walked around the desk, coming before Yujiro and Samui. He looked them over for a second, before bowing. Then you must be the Ni sisters, Samui and Yujiro. He asked politely as they bowed in return. Samui spoke for them. Hi, Hokage-sama, we are Yujiro and Samui Ni, former genin of Kumagakure. The Sandaime smiled sadly. Yes, I see. Welcome to Konohagakure. I have the forms for your shinobi licenses here on my desk, and I'll have a photographer come by later in the week to take your pictures. Is that reasonable? Samui and Yujiro nodded. Hi, Hokage-sama. The old man settled back in his chair and smiled. Good. Now, Uzumaki-chan, how did the retrieval go? There were no problems, I hope. Yugao shook her head, and the Sandaime lifted an eyebrow. Seeing the questioning look being shot at her, she expounded. The katana-wielding Jonin explained that they had come across several bandits with hostages, and all the rest. The Sandaime took the scroll containing the head of Tetsuo, and nodded gravely. So, Uzumaki-chan, what would you say about how your team performed during this unofficial mission? He asked. Yugao thought for a second, tapping her chin with a forefinger for a second. Well, I'd say that their abilities are wasted on D ranks, though they do need to learn how to work together. I'd still say that they should be doing mid-level C ranks, or low B ranks. That would work well with their skill set. The Sandaime looked surprised, but thought over what he'd been told. Naruto had shown proficiency with his bow and bladed weapons, as well as his jutsu. Yujiro and Samui had shown their ability to use higher-level lightning jutsu, which meant that they had higher chakra control and reserves. They had also shown skill with their weapons of choice, the tanto for Samui and claws for Yujiro. He nodded. I agree with your assessment, Uzumaki-chan. See to it that they are given several teamwork exercises during your 2 weeks off from missions, as well as other training. That is all for now, you are dismissed. Wish Haite-kun good luck for me, would you? Yugao nodded and left in a shunshin of leaves, while Samui and Yujito looked to Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki began to leave with the two blonde women when the Sandaime cleared his throat. Ahem. Naruto-kun, care to tell me why you have a henge placed around your arm? He asked with an amused look. Naruto looked down at his human-looking arm before molding his chakra intoning Kai. In a puff of smoke, the flesh of his arm disappeared, and in its place was the thick black scales, talons and red gem of a dragon. The Sandaime's eyebrows rose in surprise. So, that is what you meant when you said your bloodline would manifest publicly. Naruto nodded. Yup. And as far as I know, it's permanent until I fully change, which, before that, the rest of my body will undergo a similar transformation. Scales, talons and the like. The older male nodded. Alright, my boy, just tell me, if you need anything, okay? An evil smile crept across Naruto's face, and suddenly, the Sandaime wished he hadn't said that. Well, there's one thing you could do for me. The Sandaime sweated profusely as he entered the council chambers. On one side, there was the civilian council. Those who ran the hospital, the merchants' guild, and several other necessities to successfully run a village. On the other side, sat the clan heads, the Akimichi, Yamanaka, Inuzuka, Hyuga, Aburame, Uchiha, which was only Mikoto, and a couple of minor clans such as the Kurama. Sitting in between the civilian and shinobi sides in the middle of the room, in the back, sat the elders, Shimura Danzo, and Hamura and Kaher. The Hokage sat in the middle near the door, on a raised desk, so that he towered over the others, as well as whoever was currently in the middle of the floor. However, for all the power Hears and Sarutobi's station afforded, he was scared for his life, as if he was the one standing in the pit, and someone else, most likely the angry wives of Hiashi and Hisashi, as well as the others, would be the ones staring down at him from the desk, damning him to hell for what he was about to announce. Miss Haruno, Sakura's mother and the head of a clan of merchants, looked up from her conversation to respectfully ask the Sandaime, if we may know, Hokage-sama, what have you called this council meeting for? The aged Hokage sat in his chair heavily, dreading the coming moments. He sighed and began. Council members, it has come to my attention that one of my shinobi is gifted with a bloodline. The chamber was silent, with many raised eyebrows. The Sandaime licked his lips nervously, and continued. The shinobi in question is Naruto Uzumaki. Now, there were concerned looks on all the faces of the council members. Some were worried about themselves, others were worried about Naruto, seeing as the Hokage spoke with a grave voice. I have called Naruto in today to show his bloodline, and see if he is deemed able to participate in the clan creation act. Now, the council was in an uproar. It was led by Miss Haruno, Hiashi, and Hisashi Hyuga, Sume Inuzuka, Mikoto Uchiha, and Tenteki Higurashi, one of the wealthier shinobi suppliers. Misa, because she liked the boy. He had befriended her daughter and built up her confidence, while still being a nice and personable kid. Hiashi and Hisashi's reasons were simple. Their daughters were trying to get involved with Naruto, or, in Nijiko's case, already were, and they liked him for what he does and had done for them. Sume Inuzuka was involved in the fracas because she didn't want to see a kid like Naruto, who was loyal and upstanding, get taken to the pound by a bunch of greedy bitches. Mikoto saw Naruto as a younger friend, and maybe something more, a small part of her mind whispered, which was rapidly squashed and ignored. He needed tender love and care, not smothering by a bunch of fanatical girls. Tenteki Higurashi was pretty sure that Naruto was in love with his daughter. He knew for a fact that Tenten loved Naruto with a passion, and not just cause he stoked her forge, if you know what I'm saying, and he was one hell of a forger. The kid brought him strange ores that he had never seen before, and was able to make them into weapons with ease. That was not the only reason, of course. There were many others, including the fact that he understood hard work and the like. Danzo spoke up, his scratchy voice silencing the voices of the council. If Uzumaki is able to showcase his bloodline, then I agree with Hokage-sama. He should be put under the CCA. The Sandaime sighed, and motioned for an Anbu. One of the masked shinobi appeared kneeling by his side, and he whispered instructions in his ear. The Anbu nodded and vanished, reappearing seconds later with Naruto Uzumaki in the center of the chamber. Naruto looked around at the faces of the council, before bowing. What can I do for you today? The Sandaime spoke up from his seat. Naruto, we require a demonstration of your bloodline to determine whether or not you are eligible for the CCA. The blonde nodded. Alright. Do you mind if we adjourn to training ground 24 for the demonstration? Some of my abilities are destructive. The ninja half of the council stood and walked over to their civilian counterparts, before, in a massive group shunshin, they disappeared in a swirl of leaves. At training ground 24, a large gust of wind blew through the trees, ruffling leaves and branches. Several shinobi appeared in the middle of the training ground, along with several modestly dressed civilians. Naruto stood before them, looking slightly nervous. The Sandaime motioned for him to go ahead, and he took a deep breath. My bloodline comes in several parts, not just one, like many others. He said, gaining looks of surprise from the council. First, I have a talent for seal-less ninjutsu. Turning to the 5 wooden posts set up at the far end of the ground, he focused, and his right hand became wreathed in flames. Curling his fingers into a loose fist, the fire around his arm gathered into his palm in a small orb. Throwing his arm out, the ball of fire sailed at the left-hand training post, hitting the wood and seeming to fizzle out. The council seemed unimpressed, until... boom. With a mighty boom, the wooden post was exploded into a million pieces, before being consumed by a massive fireball. Now they were impressed. Somewhat. Danzo spoke up. Well, certainly impressive. I do not see why you should be given CCA status for just that. Naruto didn't reply. Instead, his arm began to crackle with lightning. Before he thrust his arm out, a bolt of lightning flying from his hand and striking the next post, leaving a deep scorch mark on it. Next, his hand took on a frosty look, cold air trailing behind it. The frost gathered into his palm, before a spike of ice about 2 feet long hurled from his palm, impaling into the wooden post about halfway through. Naruto decided that he wouldn't show the elemental runes. He needed some secrets after all. Those were my seal-less techniques. The next 2 parts are what my bloodline does to me. Many mouths were agape at this, the thoughts, there's more, running through many minds. Naruto placed his hands in the ram sign, before saying, Kai. The henge around his arm disappeared, revealing its scaly glory to everyone. I call this part of my bloodline, Dragon's Body. As far as I know, I will gradually change until I am actually a dragon, with my body becoming more and more dragon-like over time. Until then, it is permanent, and I can only hide it under a henge. Hiashi blinked blankly. And what's the other part? He seemed almost afraid. Naruto breathed deep and faced away from the clan heads and council. Y'all. A large steam of fire spewed from his mouth, scaring the hell out of the council. It died down as Naruto closed his mouth. Turning back to face the council, Naruto spoke again. I call that part Dragon's Voice. It allows me to shout, for the lack of a better word, and have different effects. Danzo asked, and what other effects can your voice have? Naruto shrugged. Anywhere from fire breath to frost breath, and anywhere in between. He made a shadow clone, and instructed it to stand a little ways away. Cry. Incandescent purple light shot from Naruto's mouth, slamming into the shadow clone and wrapping around it. The clone's eyes whitened in pain before it dispelled abruptly. That was a shout that erodes the armor of an enemy, making them weaker and allowing for weapons to do more damage. Naruto said, shaking the memories of the clone off. The councils, both civilian and shinobi, were left speechless. They would have been mentally impaired to not have such a bloodline in the village. Besides, who could say no to someone who could turn into a dragon? Danzo stepped forward, raising his hand. I believe I speak for all of us when I say that Uzumaki-san is worthy for the CCA. Both councils nodded mutely, still unable to comprehend the power that Naruto wielded. The Sandarime coughed into his hand, hiding a chuckle that threatened to come out. Well then, it seems we are all in agreement. As of today, you, Naruto Uzumaki, are now under the CCA. There is no real limit to the number of wives you can have, but still, try to keep it decent. Council dismissed. Naruto sighed as he reapplied the henge to his arm. He had not wanted to do this, but with his betrothal to Samui and Yujito, he really had no choice. Now, all he had to do was tell the Hyuga twins and Suki about everything, and that was something he was not looking forward to. What? Maybe he wouldn't have to tell them. Earlier that day, Sakura and Ino mulled over the new gossip they had just discovered earlier today, and the effects it would have on their friends. Naruto's awkwardness had not gone unnoticed. They were ninja, for Kami's sake. They trained for this sort of thing. The Kunoichi duo decided to search out Tenten, who they knew would know what was going on with Naruto, and those hot blondes he was hanging out with. The two Genin visited Higurashi's weapon shop, weapons for violent occasions, and found it closed, with a note directing anyone looking for Tenten or her dad. Tenten was at training ground 9, while her father was at a council meeting. They found the bun-haired girl hurling various weaponry, whether it was made for throwing or not, at a particularly brutalized wooden training post. Also at the training ground, there were Tenten's teammates. Nijiko, her long brown hair lashing about wildly as she beat on Might Guy, her sensei, while a mini-clone of the man watched, while taking notes at a rapid pace. Even though she had the white eyes of the Hyuga clan, Ino and Sakura mistook her for someone else, as the eyes were not activated, and she was not using the Hyuga gentle fist style of taijutsu. Instead, she was thrashing her Jonin sensei without restraint, in moves designed to relieve stress and break bones. Tenten paused in her murdering of an inanimate object, wiping her brow of sweat. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the two new Genin looking at her. Growling lowly, she spun and abruptly yelled, "What do you want?" Sakura and Ino paused at the violence promised in Tenten's tone, but recovered admirably. "We were wondering about Naruto. He's our friend, and we're worried about him," Ino said, placating. "He seemed really stressed out, and we saw him today with two girls that he called his teammates, even though we never seen them before." Tenten frowned angrily, while Nijiko growled like an angry panther, and kicked Guy square in the groin with all the strength she could muster. Guy's deep, booming voice sounded like he had sucked helium for an hour. The Jonin collapsed to ground, clutching his Pakage with a cry of awe. my youth. Lee looked somewhere between impressed, frightened and sympathetic. He quickly labeled the move one hitman killer on his notepad before dropping it to the ground and hurrying over to help his sensei. Nijiko stalked over to Ino and grabbed the girl by the front of her tank top, pulling her face to face with the livid Hyuga. Who are they? What do they look like? Are they hotter than me? Tell me what they look like so I can find them and destroy them. She snarled angrily. Ino shook under the unrestrained pressure of Nijiko's killing intent, which felt like it was trying to crush the breath out of her lungs. He said they were named Samui and Yujidoni. They're both blonde and really hot. Please don't kill me. Tenten grabbed the Hyuga's wrist, pulling the angry branch member off of the terrified Yamanaka. Nijiko activated her Byakugan out of reflex, and took off into the surrounding foliage to find two blondes. Tenten chased after her, leaving two shaking Kunoichis and guys still on the ground, clutching his broken youth. Ichiraku ramen had been a favorite eatery of Naruto's for years. They didn't just serve ramen, although that was their main dish. The family chef duo of Tuchi and Aim also cooked other noodle dishes, as well as sushi, onigiri, and teriyaki. After Naruto had left with an envoy for something, Samui and Yujido, on Naruto's recommendation, gone to the little ramen stand for a quick meal. Samui was enjoying one of her favorite dishes, sukiyaki, with a content look on her face as she savored the noodles and the meat. Yujido practically purred in contentment as she consumed a platter of sushi. Unfortunately, their meal was interrupted by an angry female voice shouting, "There they are." The curtain to the establishment was thrown open by an angry Hyuga Nijiko as she stormed into the stand, Byakugan blazing furiously. As soon as she was clear of the cloth obstruction, she charged at the nearest blonde, which just so happened to be Samui. The ex-Kumo Genin dove to the side as Nijiko's chakra-enhanced fist plowed through the air her head had occupied, shattering her bowl into 100 pieces. Samui could only dodge the multitude of Jayuken strikes that were aimed at harming, maiming, killing her. While she was no slouch in taijutsu, having been taught by the fitness nut that is Killer Bee, she knew that trying to block a strike from a Hyuga would result in damaging her Chinketsu. Trying to counterattack would only leave her open for a follow-up from Nijiko, and that would be all she wrote. As she tried to beat the stuffing out of Samui, Nijiko screamed, "How dare you? How could you steal him away? I'll murder you for taking him away from me." Samui's back hit the wall of Ichiraku's, leaving her with no place to dodge, as Nijiko took a strange stance, and a green symbol lit up the floor. "You're within my divination," she shouted. Tenten's eye met Yujido's, and a quick understanding was reached between them. Tenten knew that move would, with proper strength, hurt Samui quite badly. Both Yujido and Tenten dived forward and grabbed Nijiko's arms, restraining her from following through on her move. "Let me go," Nijiko shouted wildly, thrashing about in the other two Genin's hold. "I'll kill that bitch for taking Naruto away from me." Samui, being the strong and proud woman she was, stood up for herself with steel in her eyes. "I haven't stolen anyone from you." Fire very nearly flew from Nijiko's eyes. "Haven't stolen anyone. Because of your betrothal to Naruto, he will have to forget all about me and marry you. How dare you take away the love of my life?" Samui blinked, thunderstruck. "You think we did this on purpose?" Her icy blue eyes became colder than the Arctic. "We weren't told about her betrothal until a week ago." Nijiko's thrashing subsided, and she frowned, confused. You didn't want to marry Naruto." Yujido, still holding one of the Hyuga's arms securely, shook her head. "Hell no. We didn't even know who he was until 3 days ago, when we first met him. And even then, he was almost as pissed off as you are now." This was news to Tenten and Nijiko, who looked at Yujido in surprise. "Really?" The blonde Jinchuriki rolled her eyes and nodded. "Yes. He railed at me about not being able to keep a promise or something. He also said something about revealing his bloodline, so he can make someone happy." Nijiko's eyes widened in understanding, as did Tenten's. "Oh." The sudden shifting of fabric made all the girls' heads snap towards the entrance of Ichiraku's, where Suki, Hinata, and Hanabi stood, mouths agape. They looked between the heiresses and the other girls in confusion. "What's so important about a bloodline?" Suki spoke haltingly. "When a single person has an important enough bloodline, the council can vote on whether or not to place him under the CCA, or Clan Creation Act. It allows a man to take multiple wives to start a clan and build it up quickly." Aim's mouth dropped open as she looked between the girls again. "Ooh." That single word seemed to break a dam in Hinata and Hanabi. "What?" Their words might as well have been one of Naruto's shouts, the force of it blowing everyone's hair back in a 10-yard radius. Apparently, the idea that they might have to share Naruto had never entered their minds. They had thought that, eventually, Naruto would choose one of them, and they would live happily ever after. It had never occurred to them what would happen to the others. Naruto appeared in the middle of the stand in a crack of thunder. He took in the scene rapidly, from the way Yujido and Tenten were holding Nijiko, to the angry stance Samui had taken, to the shocked surprise on Hinata and Hanabi's face, and the resigned determination on Suki's. He sighed unhappily. "I guess you found out, huh?" Naruto asked rhetorically. He gave the girls a resigned look. "It seems we need to have a conversation. Why didn't you tell us you were getting married, Naruto?" Hanabi demanded angrily. The Hyuga twins, along with Suki, Tenten, Nijiko and Denise sisters, sat in a semicircle around the blonde in an unused training ground. Naruto leveled a steady glare on the slightly younger Hyuga twin, letting her know that he was not amused. I was told 30 minutes, before I had to leave on the mission to retrieve Samui and Yujito from Kumo. I only had time to go see Tenten, and buy my gear, before I had to leave. The twins and Suki shot Tenten heated glares, before turning confused looks on Nijiko. The older Genin raised an eyebrow at the younger girls. What? Tenten and I are teammates and the only girls in our squad, we tell each other a lot. This made the girls glare harder at Tenten. The bun-haired girl glared right back. Stop looking at me like that. We may be acquaintances through Naruto, but that doesn't mean we're friends. Naruto looked to Suki, who seemed to be fidgeting with her fingers and staring at her feet. What do you think of all this, Suki? You haven't said much. The Uchiha Kunoichi sighed, and brushed a wayward bang back from her face. I don't like it, she started quietly. But, I knew that this was a possibility. Mom and I are the last of our clan, and Ka-san made me study the clan laws. If I don't marry someone of my choosing before my 17th birthday, I'd be forced to marry someone of the council's choosing, and made to bear a child within a year. Hanabi jumped to her feet and pointed a finger accusingly at Suki. So you're just using Naruto to avoid having to marry someone you don't want to. You probably don't even love him. Suki shot to her feet, two tomos in each suddenly blood-red eyes glaring at Hanabi. How dare you? I've known Naruto longer than anyone else, and we've been friends for that entire time. He was my first friend outside of my brother, and the only one who isn't considered a murdering psychopath. Actually. Naruto had his hand in the air, drawing the attention of all present to him. The younger girls shot him slightly fearful looks. Tenten's the one who's known me the longest. All eyes fell onto Tenten, who was fiddling with her pink shirt. We grew up in the same orphanage. Nichiko gave Tenten a startled look. You never told me about that. Her teammate sighed and looked at the ground, refusing to meet the Hyuga's eyes. To be honest, those weren't the happiest times of my life. Naruto sat down next to her, and wrapped his arms around her shoulders, and she leaned into his comforting warmth. You don't have to tell them, if you don't want to. Tenten sighed. No, it's better to tell them now, than to have them pester me later. She took a deep breath, and began to tell her story. I was one, and my dad was away on a long-term mission, and my mother had to take over the shop. When the Kyuubi attacked, part of the shop collapsed, while my mother was still inside. It was only after the Kyuubi was gone that the surviving ninja found me, and since neither of my parents were able to take care of me, one being dead, and the other indisposed for an unknown amount of time, they took me to a local orphanage and dropped me there, on the same day that Naruto arrived there. She wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled softly at Naruto. When I was old enough to walk, the matron took me with her everywhere, including Naruto's room. From the time he was a year old, to his 3rd year, I was his only friend. I visited him every day, and we would talk about everything that came to mind. Though, now that I think about it, we both talked at each other, because he still spoke that strange language, that no one can understand. She leaned her cheek against Naruto's, and closed her eyes with a sigh. A year later, and my dad came back from his mission, picked me up from the orphanage, and that was that. I still visited Naruto every day, and even taught him some of the things I learned from my dad, after he retired, and I decided to be a ninja. Naruto smiled gently, stroking her back softly. It was due to her influence that made me want to use the bow. Hanabi looked between Naruto and Tenten with ill-concealed jealousy. But what about Suki? She's just using you. Suki grabbed the younger Hyuga by the front of her jacket angrily. I am not. Take that back. Hanabi ripped her jacket out of Ichiha's hands. Make me, copy bitch. She spat. As it came to blows, Naruto appeared in the middle of the two girls, hands outstretched and holding them back by their foreheads. Suki, Hanabi, that's enough, stop it. They ignored Naruto and pushed him aside, Suki tackling Hanabi to the ground, the two girls rolling around on the ground, and wildly attempting to thrash each other. I said stop. The ground seemed to tremble, and thunder rolled as Naruto's voice reverberated through the clearing. All the girls hit the ground clutching their ears, the spat between the two girls forgotten as they rolled around on the grass in pain. Through the pain, they looked through shaking eyes to see one of the most terrifying sights they had ever seen. The red-orange that was present within the pupils of Naruto's eyes had overtaken the rest of the eye, iris and sclera, leaving him with a malevolent gaze. Orange wind seemed to swirl about his form, as if he was just about to catch on fire. He stalked over to where Hanabi and Suki lay, glaring down at them. A light yellow orb appeared in his hand, glowing warmly, in direct contrast with the evil aura he was giving out. He extended the orb outward, and a wave of light washed over the clearing. A soothing note rang in the girls' ears as their burst eardrums were mended. Once he was assured that they were all healed, he let the light die, before speaking to the two girls in an angry tone of voice. I want you two to realize something, he said, pointing a taloned finger at them with narrow eyes. I don't care, if you two love me, if it leads to you two fighting over me like a prize. "You are friends." The two girls looked away, ashamed, "And if I am the reason you keep fighting like this because you can't figure out a solution, then I will solve the problem myself. I will remove myself from your lives, and you will never see me again." The two girls gasped and made to object, but Naruto cut across them. "No, you can't reason with me on this. I want you two to go home and think on this. Is fighting over a boy really a reason to disregard years of friendship?" The malevolent aura, along with the redness in Naruto's eyes, receded. "Tenten, Nijiko, can you take Suki and Hanabi home? Make sure to tell their parents what they did." The two Kunoichi nodded, and lead the younger two away, Hinata following, while waving sadly at Naruto. Naruto sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose, turning to the ex-Kumonin. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. It's late, I'll show you to my apartment complex. Come on." Samui and Yujito followed him, concerned expressions on their faces. Without any prompting, Naruto began to speak. "I knew there would be problems with the sharing me thing, but I didn't think it would come to this. It sucks having to yell at my precious people." Not another word was said as they walked through the streets of Konoha. As they climbed the steps of Naruto's apartment building, they met Yuga in the hallway. She told them to meet her at Training Ground 17 for training the next morning, and left them alone for the night. The three said goodnight to each other and entered their separate apartments. 2 weeks later. The next 2 weeks were spent team-building exercises, where Yuga would pit Naruto, Samui and Yujito against her and her brother, Haite Gecko, who was also a Kenjutsu master and Naruto's previous teacher. Outside of team time, Naruto went on dates with both Samui and Yujito. First, he took Samui to the Platinum Walk, a high-class restaurant that served almost anything at the right price. They had ordered a shared serving of sukiyaki, along with a plate of inagi onigiri. During the meal, the two blondes spent a suspicious amount of time holding hands and sending blush-laden looks at each other. Afterwards, they had gone for ice cream at a nearby stand, Samui getting mint chocolate chip and Naruto, pistachio. They enjoyed their cool treat while strolling through a park, hands held tenderly in the opposite. At the end of the night, Naruto and Samui stood in front of Samui's door. Flashback. Naruto's contrasting eyes stared into Samui's cool blue with intensity. Unbidden, their necks bent forward, heads tilting forward, their lips coming precariously close to each other's. Samui suddenly drew back with a hiss of pain, her hand going to the back of her neck. "What's wrong, Samui-chan?" Naruto asked, concerned. Samui blushed slightly at his closeness. "It's my shoulders, they start to knot up around this time of night, and it gets really painful." Suddenly bashful and very red, Naruto stammered, "Or maybe I could help you with that. Maybe a massage." The blush burned on both their cheeks, and Samui began to fidget with her hands. "I'd like that, Naruto-kun." With faces that could be seen from the sky, the blonde Kunoichi took Naruto's hand and led him inside. She left him in the bathroom to undress, while he filled the tub. Once the bath had been drawn at the right temperature, Naruto took his clothes and folded them, setting them in a corner of the room. He stepped into the hot water and sat, tapping his fingers nervously. The door opened and stepped through and closed it before turning around, showing Naruto that she was only wearing a towel. She hesitated next to the tub, hand on the knot of her towel. She told herself that there was no reason she should be worried. They had been to the hot springs together on mixed bathing day. Yugao had insisted on it. She said it would derail any awkwardness between the team. Samui steeled herself. She was a Kunoichi, damn it. If she didn't have the guts to get naked in front of the guy she liked, then she shouldn't have invited him into her apartment. Mind made, she tugged the knot loose, and let the towel slide to the floor. Naruto had seen Samui naked before. He had not, however, been alone with her at the time. With Yujito and Yugao with them, he had not gotten the chance to look her over for real, instead glancing quickly and hoping he hadn't been seen. Samui was closer to 15 than 14, but she still had the figure of a full-grown woman. Her legs were long and shapely, her hips round, her stomach flat and toned, her breasts round and full with little to no sag despite their size, long toned arms, and a beautiful face framed by light blonde hair. She had scars here and there, but instead of detracting from her appearance, they added to it. They showed that she was not a dainty flower to sheltered and hidden, but rose to admired and shone, with the thorns only adding to the appearance. She stepped into the bath and turned around, either unknowingly presenting Naruto with a close-up of her rear teasing him, and sat down between his legs. She leaned back with a sigh of contentment, her back against his chest. The talons on Naruto's fingers receded to normal human lengths, the spikes around the elbows shortening and blunting, while the scales broke up into smaller segments, resembling snake scales. He channeled a small amount of lightning chakra to his fingertips, and dug them into Samui's shoulders gently. Samui moaned as her muscles loosened, and the tension of the day was relaxed away. "Naruto, your fingers are magical." He moved his hands and magical fingers down her back and arms. If possible, Samui relaxed even more, almost melting into a pile of goo. Barely conscious, the blonde Kunoichi turned around in the bathtub and circled her arms around Naruto's waist, pressing herself and her assets into his chest. It was now very hard for Naruto to stop himself from doing something untoward. They washed each other tenderly, stealing small kisses in between, until the water had gone cold. They now stood at Samui's door, the kunoichi wearing a robe and Naruto his previous if damp clothes. Their eyes would lock onto each other's. They would jump after realizing that they were staring, blush and look away. Finally, Samui had enough. "Fuck it," she muttered, grabbing Naruto by the collar of his shirt and pulling him forward, crashing her lips against his. Their lips molded to one another's as electric sparks ran down their spines. The kiss was chaste, but sweet and filled with promise for the future. When breath became an issue, and it was a long time, their ninja, they separated, leaning their foreheads against each other's, and stealing small kisses in between labored pants. "We are going to do that again," Samui declared firmly in a whisper. Naruto chuckled breathlessly. "Yes we are." Flashback end. With Yujiro, Naruto took her to a well-known sushi place, called Kubikiri Hacho. To Naruto's amazement, Yujiro had consumed about half of her body weight in raw fish and other assorted seafood. Afterwards, they had gotten dango, and eaten it in under a blossoming sakura tree as the sun set, leaning on each other. The night had ended in front of Yujiro's door, where the blonde kunoichi kissed Naruto aggressively with great passion and force, almost completely dominating the Ryu shinobi with her tongue. Almost. He fought back with equal fervor for many minutes, until oxygen became a necessity, and they called it a draw and broke apart. They did battle many times that night, eventually falling asleep on the couch in each other's arms. And now we come to the present. Team Yugao stood in front of the Sandarume's desk in the mission hall, a little more confident in their ability to protect one another. "Ah, Team Yugao, I take it you are here for a mission?" he asked genially. The Jonin nodded with a small smile. "Indeed, my team is ready." The Sandarume made a noise of agreement, and began to rifle through the piles of scrolls on his desk. A tap from the window drew his attention. A messenger hawk with a small scroll attached to its leg caught, before jumping on the desk and presenting its leg. The Sandarume waved the bird off and began to read. The further he read, the more he frowned until he looked positively unhappy. "Well, it seems like you came in at the right time. Kakashi Hatake and Team 7 took a C-rank mission 2 days ago, escorting a bridge builder to his home country of Nami. They ran into 2 Chunin-level Nukenin and were able to subdue them, learning that the mission was in fact purposely misranked. They have sent for reinforcements, and Team Yugao is one of the most prepared in the village." The Sandarume explained shortly. "You will go to Nami and provide backup for Team 7. This is currently ranked as a B rank, with the possibility of becoming an A. Do you accept?" Team Yugao nodded as one. "Hi. Dismiss." They split up to gather equipment for a B rank, Naruto, leaving a note pinned to his door with a kunai, explaining the situation to anybody who was looking for him. They met up at the gates and departed through the treetops. Mikoto Uchiha watched from her spot in the guardhouse of the gate, as Team Yugao disappeared into the distance, a small smile on her face. Her mind wandered to the night 2 weeks ago, when her decision was cemented in her mind. Flashback, Mikoto was walking past the training ground, on her way home from the council meeting. Her mind was running over the new information about one of her favorite genin, and her reaction to it. As soon as she heard that Naruto was under the CCA, she immediately felt hopeful. And this worried her slightly. A distant shout of anger echoed out of the training ground, and into the night, the voice familiar to the Uchiha matriarch. "Naruto-kun?" she wondered. Entering the perimeter, she came across an angry Naruto beating the figurative shit out of a training log. As she watched, he released an angry roar, and punched the log, which not did snap, or break or dent. It exploded into a shower of splinters. Huffing from exertion, Naruto sat down on a nearby fallen log with a sigh. "Naruto." His head snapped towards the origin of the voice, finding Mikoto peering at him with worry in her eyes. "Are you alright?" Naruto placed his hand on his face and sighed sadly. "No, not really. Have you talked to Suki tonight?" Mikoto took a seat next to Naruto with wide eyes. "No, I haven't. Is she in trouble?" "You could say that." He rubbed his face tiredly. "Why do they love me, Mikoto? What is so special about me, that the girls would fight over me like animals?" Mikoto gasped. "Is that what happened?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah. First, Nijiko tried to Jayukin Samui to death, and then Suki and Hanabi tried to claw each other's eyes out." Mikoto laid a hand on Naruto's shoulder and gently said, "Naruto, the girls love you, because they know that you would do anything for them. Because you care about them, and their feelings. Because you are so sweet, and funny and serious and just, you. Despite your idea that you are just a normal person, Naruto, you're not. There is something about that draws people in, makes them want to trust you." Her gaze dropped as she muttered, "I know I trust you." Naruto turned a confused look onto Mikoto. "What does that mean?" She refused to look him in the eye, and asked, "Naruto, how hard would it be for you to imagine kissing me?" His eyes widened and his jaw dropped, so great was his shock. "Wow." Mikoto tilted her head down, so that her hair hid her face. "Could you imagine kissing me, Naruto?" He didn't answer. Surprise had disabled his vocal cords. Taking the silence as an answer, and the one she feared, she turned away, so that he couldn't see her tears. She stood to leave. She took 4 steps before a hand that she recognized as Naruto's landed on her shoulder. Naruto. She was spun around, and before she could say anything, her lips were claimed by Naruto's in a fierce kiss. She was surprised for a second before her mind kicked in. Her arms wrapped around his shoulders as his wrapped around her waist. They held each other as their tongues came into the fray. Despite the passion, the kiss was tender and sweet, and to Naruto, it felt like he was safe and warm. For Mikoto, it was new and refreshing. She hadn't done anything like this since before Fugaku died. They separated, staring into each other's eyes. Mikoto. She smiled as happy tears began to trail down her face. Naruto. Flashback end. The Uchiha matriarch smiled to herself, and thought over the other nights that they had met over the last couple of weeks. They had been sweet and fleeting, but happy and romantic nonetheless. She couldn't wait for him to return. With Team Yugao, 4 hours later. The 3 genin and single jonin leaped through the trees in Nami no Kuni, having crossed the expanse of water separating Hai no Kuni from Nami. They leapt through the trees until their forward progress was halted by a thick fog bank. The sound of clashing metal and shouts could be heard from within. Yugao frowned as she extended her senses. Be careful, this mist is laced with chakra, a move only known to Kiri shinobi. Use all of your senses and watch each other's backs. Hold on, sensei, Naruto stopped them. I can clear this up in a few seconds. Yujiro gave Naruto an incredulous look. Naruto-kun, unless you can somehow control the weather, I don't think anyone can clear this up without killing the caster. A smirk stretched across his lips. He stepped forward and drew a hard breath into his lungs. Laklakur. The light blue wave of light flew from his mouth, dispersing 8 feet in front of him. Within seconds of the shout being released, the mist dispersed, along with the clouds in the sky, leaving the normally cloudy Nami bathed in rare sunlight. It also revealed a scene of battle in front of them. Team 7, Suki, Hanabi, and Sakura, and their client, an old drunk Tazuna, and their sensei, Kakashi, were in the middle of a battle. Kakashi was kunai to Zanatu with a tall, muscular man with no eyebrows and bandages around the lower half of his face. Hanabi was next to Tazuna in her Gyuken stance, using her Byakugan to anticipate threats. Suki was fighting off a Mizubunshin of Zabuza, along with a shinobi covered by a poncho with a wicked-looking gauntlet on his arm. Sakura was dodging Claude's swipes from a second identical Claude and ponchoed shinobi. Everyone froze as the mist dissipated, turning to look at the source of the voice. Wold. A thunderlight cracked toward the air as a predominantly black-wearing sword-wielding genin appeared behind the Mizubunshin, with his strange black sword drawn. The bunshin collapsed into a puddle of water as the real Zabuza jumped back from Kakashi. Shit. I should have known that you would call for reinforcements. Kirigakure no jutsu. Nothing happened. Zabuza's eyes widened in shock. What the fuck? Kirigakure no jutsu. Nothing. Naruto looked up from his position next to Suki. That's not going to work. The swordsman's eyes flickered over the 6 genin and 2 jonin, thinking over the variables. Fuck. Mizubunshin. 10 clones swirled out of the water, all carrying copies of Zabuza's massive sword. They rushed at the Konoha shinobi, creating a virtual wall of bodies. Seeing what Zabuza was doing, Kakashi crouched over and piled the remaining chakra into his hand. Blue lightning cackled along his arm, chirping like a cacophony of birds. Chidori. He sprinted along the top of the water with his hand held low, trailing along the top of the lake. Zabuza created a Mizubunshin in Kakashi's path which had no time to move before Kakashi's hand plowed through its face. His Chidori was weakened through exerting energy to stab through the clone, and as such only barely pierced Zabuza's shoulder. The tall swordsman gave a shout of pain while lashing out with his foot, connecting with Kakashi's gut. The Cycloptic Jonin was launched across the water into a tree, where he slumped over. The demon brothers also saw what Zabuza was doing. You son of a bitch. They backed up, and slipped their hands into pouches, pulling smoke bombs out to cover their escape. Yugao noticed this and sprinted at the two while shouting, "Stop them." As the brothers threw the bombs to the ground, a voice rang out. Ice. A wave of ice blue light flew from Naruto's mouth, enveloping the two brothers in ice. The smoke bombs fell to the ground and shattered, frozen. In the trees, a person wearing the mask of a Kiri hunter nin, froze in shock. Another Hyoten user. I'm not alone. Yugao moved quickly, restraining the two Chunin with ninja wire as Sakura and Hanabi moved to Kakashi. Green chakra covered Sakura's hands as Hanabi's Byakugan activated. Major case of chakra exhaustion, 3 cracked ribs and cracked tibia. Hanabi listed off as Sakura moved her hands over Kakashi. The one-eyed Jonin had enough energy to apologize and cover his Sharingan eye before blacking out. Yugao took charge, being the highest-ranking ninja there. Naruto, carry Kakashi. Samui, Yujito, carry the prisoners. The rest of you protect Tazuna in Manji formation. Tazuna-san, how close is your residence? The drink pointed down the road. It's about a mile. Yugao nodded. Very well. Let's get there quickly. They hurried to Tazuna's domicile as fast as Tazuna could go, which wasn't very fast. In about an hour, they made it to plain 2-story house next to the water. Tazuna threw open the door with a bang, shouting out, I'm home, my lovely. Clang. The frying pan clattered to the floor after smacking Tazuna in the face, making the older man roll around the floor with his hands covering his face. Tubaka. What have I told you about barging in here so loud? A pretty woman with long black hair and a pink sweater paused in the middle of what promised to be a very wrathful rant when she noticed that there were more people than just her dad at her door. Ah. Oh, I'm so sorry you heard that. Gumenisai. She bowed before helping her father to his feet. I'm so glad you're back safe, Dad. Inari and I missed you. Tazuna rubbed his face and gave his daughter a hug. I missed you too, Tsunami. Where is the little squirt? The back door opened as a child walked in, wearing overalls and a bucket hat, with a moody expression on his face. His face brightened slightly as he gave Tazuna a hug, but fell when he saw the shinobi. Why are they here? They're just going to die. Tsunami looked shocked. Inari. Don't say that to our guests. Apologize. Inari gave her a dead look. Why? Gato will just kill them all. He then walked upstairs. Well, someone's optimistic. Kakashi remarked dryly from Naruto's shoulder. Ah. I'm sorry, Ninja-san, I didn't know you were injured. Follow me, I'll lead you to a room where you can rest. That'd be great, Tsunami-san. This lazy bastard is quite heavy for some reason. Naruto said dryly. Kakashi apparently had enough chakra to smack himself in the face. That's why I was moving so slow. I forgot to take off my weights, damn it. Yugao shook her head. So sad to see you losing your touch, Kakashi-senpai. Your old age must be getting to you. Oh, shut up, kitty. Mutt. Pussy. Bitch. I hate you. Yugao smiled smugly. Take it like man, senpai. Naruto set the silver-haired Jonin down on a futon and covered him with a blanket. Thanks, Naruto-kun. When I wake up, I'll show you the wonders of Ichiraku. Before Yugao could retaliate, Kakashi was already snoring. Bastard better not pervert my students. Samui and Yujito followed Tazuna down to the basement, dumping the demon brothers down there, and tied them to some spare planks of wood. 4 days later. As Kakashi recovered, Yugao taught the genin how to water walk. It was hard for Naruto, seeing as he was not only a Jinchuriki, but also a male surrounded by females wearing not a lot of clothing and getting wet in them. You can see how hard it was for him. This night, the two teams sat around the table with Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari, dining on a simple meal of meat, rice and vegetables, Naruto having hunted and skinned the deer earlier. Inari stared at the shinobi in growing anger, before slamming his hands onto the table and shouting, "What the hell are you so happy for? Gato will kill you all." The shinobi looked at each other with raised brows, while Tsunami and Tazuna looked appalled at Inari's behavior. Inari. Okay, kid, let me lay down some facts. Kakashi is an A-class bordering S-class shinobi. Yuga-sensei is a former Anga captain, one of the elite. Sakura is strong and ridiculously smart, Suki has a fire fetish, Hanabi is a prodigy in her clan's taijutsu style, Yujito is powerhouse, Samui is fast, and I can breathe fire by yelling angrily. This Gato guy, a civilian with no real special powers, is boned. Naruto pointed to each shinobi as he explained. You don't understand what it's like to live like this. You don't stand a chance against him. Inari shouted with tears in his eyes. Naruto's hand slammed into the table with a bang, making everyone jump. I don't understand. You don't understand. He leaned over the table into Inari's face, his eyes being covered by the red-orange pupils. You may be suffering, but at least you have food, a warm bed, a roof over your head and people that love you. I had no one for years. Every time I walked through the village, I was ignored like a ghost. They hated me so much that they refused to acknowledge my existence. He stood up and walked to the door, sliding it open. He turned to look back at Inari. No matter how bad it is for you, someone else has always had it worse. Remember that. The door slid shut, leaving shocked silence in the room, broken only by Inari running out the back door. Hanabi turned to Kakashi with tears in her eyes. Was what he said true? Kakashi nodded and leaned back, propping himself against the wall. Yeah, it was. Samui and Yujito gave each other surprised looks. He couldn't have been treated that way because he was a Jinchuriki, right? That didn't make sense. With Naruto. This is very odd, Naruto stated in his mind. Usually I wouldn't be this angry at the little brat. I feel it too. Alduin muttered. There is something in the air that is making you more aggressive. We must find the source, it is very familiar for some reason. Just then, it seemed like a pulse of malice reverberated through the forest, coming from deeper in the trees. Naruto followed it as it pulsed quicker and quicker, eventually finding himself standing over a circular burn on the ground. It was a perfect circle, with an inverted triangle in the center, the corners touching the circle. The malice seemed stronger there than anywhere else. He knelt to examine the circle, running his fingers along the edges. What the hell is this? His answer came in the form of the ground tilting dramatically, throwing Naruto down the sudden hill, and into a pitch-black cavern. He righted himself midair, landing firmly on his feet. The cavern lit itself with torches, nearly blinding the genin. Once his sight had recovered, he gaped at what the light revealed. Carved from black stone, sitting on a throne of screaming souls, was a tall statue of a half-naked, four-armed horned creature that likely no one else except Naruto would recognize. Marin's Dagon, Daedra Prince of Chaos. Holy shit. Rumbling laughter filled the cavern. So, a mortal who recognizes me. What a surprise. Naruto blinked blankly. I never thought I'd get to see a Daedric shrine, let alone talk to a Daedric lord. Oh? You know of the Daedra. I haven't heard that title in centuries. How do you know what I am? Before he could respond, it seemed like something was probing his mind. Ah, Alduin is contained within you. I always wondered where he went, but now I know. Tell me, mortal, do you know my name? Marin's Dagon, Daedric Lord of Destruction, Chaos, and Ambition. Naruto replied. And change. Everyone seems to forget that I bring change as well. How are you here? I thought you only existed in Nern. He asked in confusion. This plane of existence is Nern. It has been changed since Alduin has been here last. I might have had a small part in that. I think that you're somehow understating your involvement. Naruto remarked dryly. What did you do? It was nothing I did, mortal, but one of your kind. I forget his name, but he tired of all the fighting and conflict in his time. So would he come to you? That seems redundant. Indeed. I almost set him on fire for being an idiot, but what he wanted gave me pause. He asked me to bring about change within the world. And since Akatosh bid me and forbid me from coming there myself, I sent one of my creations, a rather terrifying creature if I do say so myself, to cause the change for me. Naruto made a very wry face. He didn't specify how the change should come, did he? Indeed not. I sent my creation, a Onagumo as you would call it, with 10 tails to wreak havoc and change the world. Until of course, that ripple-eyed man split her into 9 pieces. While impressive, it was also very annoying for me. My only source of entertainment, sealed away. Something that Dagon had said caught Naruto's attention. Wait, she? Yes, she. Her daughters are some of the most powerful creatures on Nern. I know that you have the strongest sealed inside of you with Alduin. How come you have never found that out? Did you ever talk to her? Naruto thought hard. Whenever Alduin and I were in my mindscape, she just glared at us and made threatening gestures with her paws. I thought she was so angry that she couldn't speak. Shit. What? Naruto was startled out of his thinking by Alduin's word. He never cursed, if he could help it. I just realized something. The first time I met the Kyuubi, she wouldn't shut up about killing me, so I silenced her. So? I never took it off. Ah. Indeed. Excuse me, Lord Dagon, I need to go to my mind and talk to my other tenant. Naruto bowed shortly and sat down, meditating. With an odd fulling sucking sensation that usually came with entering his mind, Naruto was standing in the middle of a lush field of grass. There were 3 moons in the sky, even though it was daytime. Alduin, in dragon form, landed next to him, looking into a dark cave that was sealed off with thick metal bars, locked in place with a piece of paper with a large and complicated seal on it. Behind those bars, there was a giant red-orange fox, glaring at them with angry red eyes. Naruto glanced at Alduin cautiously, who nodded his scaled head. The world eater reared his head back and shouted, Tinvok, Baden. Speak, maiden. A wave of white air rolled over the Kyuubi. They stayed silent as the echoes faded. Naruto gave Alduin a confused look. Did it work? Oh, it worked alright. The feminine voice coming from the Kyuubi startled the two. When I get out of here, I'm going to eviscerate you, light you on fire, and then piss on the ashes. Words cannot describe how angry I am right now. Now, my daughter, don't get ahead of yourself. You cannot kill your intended, now can you? The 3 turned to look at the source of the voice, starting in surprise. There stood Marin's Dagon, 12 feet tall and glowing like lava. What? The fox shouted. That is right. You do remember what the punishment for being defeated was, don't you? I would have to submit to my defeater. How does that work? The Kyuubi questioned angrily. Marin smirked. You were defeated when the blonde Kage sealed you into Naruto here. However, since he died, his victory over you was transferred over to your container. The Kyuubi's jaw dropped. But that's so unfair. Naruto waved his hands wildly, drawing the attention of the 2 giants. Hey, what about me? Don't I get a say in this? No? Alduin lay next to Naruto, looking highly amused at all that was going on. What the fuck? Why not? I'm bigger than you. Naruto grabbed his hair, looking completely stressed out. For the love of Mar, how could this day get any worse? How are the girls going to take it? His face fell into despair. Oh son of a bitch, the girls. I would not be worried about how they will react, Naruto. I would be worried about my champion coming to kill you. Naruto gaped at the Daedra. I'm sorry, what? You didn't think that I was going to let you marry my daughter without being tested first? Folly. You couldn't have sent me on a quest or something. Is that too much to ask? Naruto shouted at Dagon. Yes. My champion will present herself within a week. She will be wearing my symbol and tell you my current name. Joshin. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.